One way or another, the sensible, better yet imaginative, deployment of savings by citizens is required to propel an ever-growing societal output of desired goods and services. This system is called capitalism. It has its faults and abuses, in certain respects more egregious now than ever, but it also can work wonders unmatched by other economic systems. America is Exhibit A. Our country's progress over its mere 235 years of existence could not have been imagined by even the most optimistic colonists in 1789, when the Constitution was adopted and the country's energies were unleashed. True, our country in its infancy sometimes borrowed abroad to supplement our own savings. But concurrently, we needed many Americans to consistently save, and then needed those savers or other Americans to wisely deploy the capital thus made available. If America had consumed all that it produced, the country would have been spinning its wheels. The American process has not always been pretty. Our country has forever had many scoundrels and promoters who seek to take advantage of those who mistakenly trust them with their savings. But even with such malfeasance, which remains in full force today, and also much deployment of capital that eventually floundered because of brutal competition or disruptive innovation, the savings of Americans has delivered a quantity and quality of output beyond the dreams of any colonist. From a base of only 4 million people, and despite a brutal internal war early on, pitting one American against another, America changed a world in the blink of a celestial eye. In a very minor way, Berkshire shareholders have participated in the American miracle by foregoing dividends, thereby electing to reinvest rather than consume. Originally, this reinvestment was tiny, almost meaningless, but over time, it mushroomed, reflecting the mixture of a sustained culture of savings combined with the magic of long-term compounding. Berkshire's activities now impact all corners of our country. And we are not finished. Companies die for many reasons, but, unlike the fate of humans, old age itself is not lethal. Berkshire today is far more youthful than it was in 1965. However, as Charlie and I have always acknowledged, Berkshire would not have achieved its results in any locale except America, whereas America would have been every bit the success it has been if Berkshire had never existed. So thank you, Uncle Sam. Someday your nieces and nephews at Berkshire hope to send you even larger payments than we did in 2024. Spend it wisely. Take care of the many who, for no fault of their own, get the short straws in life. They deserve better. And never forget that we need you to maintain a stable currency, and that result requires both wisdom and vigilance on your part. Property casualty insurance. P/C insurance continues to be Berkshire's core business. The industry follows a financial model that is rare, very rare, among giant businesses. Customarily, companies incur costs for labor, materials, inventories, plant and equipment, etc. before or concurrently with the sale of their products or services. Consequently, their CEOs have a good fix on knowing the cost of their product before they sell it. If the selling price is less than its cost, managers soon learn they have a problem. Hemorrhaging cash is hard to ignore. When writing P/C insurance, we receive payment up front and much later learn what our product has cost us, sometimes a moment of truth that is delayed as much as 30 or more years. We are still making substantial payments on asbestos exposures that occurred 50 or more years ago. This mode of operations has the desirable effect of giving P/C insurers cash before they incur most expenses, but carries with it the risk that the company can be losing money, sometimes mountains of money, before the CEO and directors realize what is happening. Certain lines of insurance minimize this mismatch, such as crop insurance or hail damage, in which losses are quickly reported, evaluated, and paid. Other lines, however, can lead to executive and shareholder bliss as the company is going broke. Think coverages such as medical malpractice or product liability. In long-tail lines, a P/C insurer may report large but fictitious profits to its owners and regulators for many years, even decades. The accounting can be particularly dangerous if the CEO is an optimist or a crook. These possibilities are not fanciful. History reveals a large number of each species. In recent decades, this money upfront, loss payments later model has allowed Berkshire to invest large sums, float, while generally delivering what we believe to be a small underwriting profit. We make estimates for surprises, and so far, these estimates have been sufficient. We are not deterred by the dramatic and growing loss payments sustained by our activities. As I write this, think wildfires. It's our job to price to absorb these and unemotionally take our lumps when surprises develop. It's also our job to contest runaway verdicts, spurious litigation, and outright fraudulent behavior. Under Ajit, our insurance operation has blossomed from an obscure Omaha-based company into a world leader, renowned for both its taste for risk and its Gibraltar-like financial strength. Moreover, Greg, our directors, and I all have a very large investment in Berkshire in relation to any compensation we receive. We do not use options or other one-sided forms of compensation. If you lose money, so do we. This approach encourages caution, but does not ensure foresight. P/C insurance growth is dependent on increased economic risk. No risk, no need for insurance. Think back only 135 years when the world had no autos, trucks, or airplanes. Now there are 300 million vehicles in the U.S. alone, a massive fleet causing huge damage daily. Property damage arising from hurricanes, tornadoes, and wildfires is massive, growing, and increasingly unpredictable in their patterns and eventual costs. It would be foolish, make that madness, to write 10-year policies for these coverages, but we believe one-year assumption of such risks is generally manageable. If we change our minds, we will change the contracts we offer. During my lifetime, auto insurers have generally abandoned one-year policies and switched to the 6-month variety. This change reduced float, but allowed more intelligent underwriting. No private insurer has the willingness to take on the amount of risk that Berkshire can provide. At times, this advantage can be important. But we also need to shrink when prices are inadequate. We must never write inadequately priced policies in order to stay in the game. That policy is corporate suicide. Properly pricing P/C insurance is part art, part science, and is definitely not a business for optimists. Mike Goldberg, the Berkshire executive who recruited Ajit, said it best: "We want our underwriters to daily come to work nervous, but not paralyzed." All things considered, we like the P/C insurance business. Berkshire can financially and psychologically handle extreme losses without blinking. We are also not dependent on reinsurers, and that gives us a material and enduring cost advantage. Finally, we have outstanding managers, no optimists, and are particularly well situated to utilize the substantial sums P/C insurance delivers for investment. Over the past 2 decades, our insurance business has generated $32 billion of after-tax profits from underwriting, about 3.3 cents per dollar of sales after income tax. Meanwhile, our float has grown from $46 billion to $171 billion. The float is likely to grow a bit over time, and with intelligent underwriting and some luck, has a reasonable prospect of being costless. Berkshire increases its Japanese investments. A small but important exception to our U.S.-based focus is our growing investment in Japan. It's been almost 6 years since Berkshire began purchasing shares in 5 Japanese companies that very successfully operate in a manner somewhat similar to Berkshire itself. The 5 are alphabetically Itochu, Marubeni, Mitsubishi, Mitsui, and Sumitomo. Each of these large enterprises, in turn, owns interests in a vast array of businesses, many based in Japan, but others that operate throughout the world. Berkshire made its first purchases involving the 5 in July 2019. We simply looked at their financial records and were amazed at the low prices of their stocks. As the years have passed, our admiration for these companies has consistently grown. Greg has met many times with them, and I regularly follow their progress. Both of us like their capital deployment, their managements, and their attitude in respect to their investors. Each of the 5 companies increase dividends when appropriate. They repurchase their shares when it is sensible to do so. And their top managers are far less aggressive in their compensation programs than their U.S. counterparts. Our holdings of the 5 are for the very long term, and we are committed to supporting their boards of directors. From the start, we also agreed to keep Berkshire's holdings below 10% of each company's shares. But as we approached this limit, the 5 companies agreed to moderately relax the ceiling. Over time, you will likely see Berkshire's ownership of all 5 increase somewhat. At year-end, Berkshire's aggregate cost in dollars was $13.8 billion, and the market value of our holdings totaled $23.5 billion. Meanwhile, Berkshire has consistently, but not pursuant to any formula, increased its yen-denominated borrowings. All are at fixed rates, no floaters. Greg and I have no view on future foreign exchange rates, and therefore seek a position approximating currency neutrality. We are required, however, under GAAP rules to regularly recognize in our earnings a calculation of any gains or losses in the yen we have borrowed, and at year-end had included $2.3 billion of after-tax gains due to dollar strength, of which $850 million occurred in 2024. I expect that Greg and his eventual successors will be holding this Japanese position for many decades, and that Berkshire will find other ways to work productively with the 5 companies in the future. We like the current math of our yen balance strategy as well. As I write this, the annual dividend income expected from Japanese investments in 2025 will total about $812 million, and the interest cost of our yen-denominated debt will be about $135 million. The annual gathering in Omaha. I hope you will join us in Omaha on May 3rd. We are following a somewhat changed schedule this year, but the basics remain the same. Our goal is that you get many of your questions answered, that you connect with friends, and that you leave with a good impression of Omaha. The city looks forward to your visits. We will have much the same group of volunteers to offer you a wide variety of Berkshire products that will lighten your wallet and brighten your day. As usual, we will be open on Friday from noon until 5 p.m. with lovable squishmallows, underwear from Fruit of the Loom, Brooks running shoes, and a host of other items to tempt you. Again, we will have only one book for sale. Last year, we featured Poor Charlie's Almanac and sold out. 5,000 copies disappeared before the close of business on Saturday. This year, we will offer 60 years of Berkshire Hathaway. In 2015, I asked Carrie Sova, who among her many duties managed much of the activity at the annual meeting, to try her hand at putting together a light-hearted history of Berkshire. I gave her full rein to use her imagination, and she quickly produced a book that blew me away with its ingenuity, contents, and design. Subsequently, Carrie left Berkshire to raise a family, and now has 3 children. But each summer, the Berkshire office force gets together to watch the Omaha Storm Chasers play baseball against a Triple-A opponent. I ask a few alums to join us, and Carrie usually comes with her family. At this year's event, I brazenly asked her if she would do a 60th anniversary issue featuring Charlie's photos, quotes, and stories that have seldom been made public. Even with 3 young children to manage, Carrie immediately said yes. Consequently, we will have 5,000 copies of the new book available for sale on Friday afternoon and from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday. Carrie refused any payment for her extensive work on the new Charlie edition. I suggested she and I co-sign 20 copies to be given to any shareholder contributing $5,000 to the Stevens Center that serves homeless adults and children in South Omaha. The Kaiser family, beginning with Bill Kaiser Sr., my longtime friend and Carrie's grandfather, have for decades been assisting this worthy institution. Whatever is raised through the sale of the 20 autograph books, I will match. Becky Quick will cover our somewhat re-engineered gathering on Saturday. Becky knows Berkshire like a book and always arranges interesting interviews with managers, investors, shareholders, and an occasional celebrity. She and her CNBC crew do a great job of both transmitting our meetings worldwide and archiving much Berkshire-related material. Give our director, Steve Burke, credit for the archive idea. We will not have a movie this year, but rather will convene a bit earlier at 8 a.m. I will make a few introductory remarks, and we will promptly get to the Q&A, alternating questions between Becky and the audience. Greg and Ajit will join me in answering questions, and we will take a half-hour break at 10:30 a.m. When we reconvene at 11 a.m., only Greg will join me on stage. This year we will disband at 1 p.m. but stay open for shopping in the exhibit area until 4 p.m. You can find the full details regarding weekend activities on page 16. Note particularly the always popular Brooks Run on Sunday morning. I will be sleeping. My wise and good-looking sister Bertie, of whom I wrote last year, will be attending the meeting along with two of her daughters, both good-looking as well. Observers all agree that the genes producing this dazzling result flow down only the female side of the family. Sob. Bertie is now 91, and we talk regularly on Sundays using old-fashioned telephones for communications. We cover the joys of old age and discuss such exciting topics as the relative merits of our canes. In my case, the utility is limited to the avoidance of falling flat on my face. But Bertie regularly one-ups me by asserting that she enjoys an additional benefit. When a woman uses a cane, she tells me men quit hitting on her. Bertie's explanation is that the male ego is such that little old ladies with canes simply aren't an appropriate target. Presently, I have no data to counter her assertion, but I have suspicions. At the meeting, I can't see much from the stage, and I would appreciate it if attendees would keep an eye on Bertie. Let me know if the cane is really doing its job. My bet is that she will be surrounded by males. For those of a certain age, the scene will bring back memories of Scarlett O'Hara and her horde of male admirers in Gone with the Wind. The Berkshire directors and I immensely enjoy having you come to Omaha, and I predict that you will have a good time and likely make some new friends. February 22nd, 2025. Warren E. Buffett, Chairman of the Board.